Hey everybody, welcome back to Brainpower. This is episode 8. I am your host, Bowen, and joining me today is Rakshak Talwar. Rakshak is a serial entrepreneur in the AI space and has a wealth of knowledge and experience that he brings to today's episode. As always, we dive into all things decentralized AI, but specifically into the My Super Agent subnet builder, which he is one of the lead developers of. It is a subnet that is both a live product and also a reference implementation for the Morpheus Network Ecosystem to kind of show off what it can do. It is live right now, both as a website and a web app, which can be accessed from your phone or a desktop. We will get into this more in the episode itself, and I'll also share the link in the bio so that you can try it for yourself. Similar to what Apple did with the introduction of the App Store during the early days of the smartphone, think of this as somewhat of an App Store type moment for decentralized AI agents. It's really awesome. Let's dive into it.
I'm trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
You're listening to Brainpower.
What I like to do generally with every guest, first of all, welcome, Rakshak, is give a little bit of background on just who you are, like who's Rakshak, what have you worked on, and then kind of how did you get involved in Morpheus? And then I want to dive into the web app and all the stuff that you're building currently. But yeah, man, welcome, first of all. And who the heck are you?
Hey, Bo. So my name is Rakshak, and I know that might be different from what you're used to hearing as a name. So it's really simple. 2 syllables, Ruck, Shuck. They both rhyme.
Yeah, most of my listeners are like used to, Dave. No,
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Yes. So it's Rakshak, and I'm from Houston. That's where I grew up. But right now, for the last 5 years, I've been living in Austin. So lifelong Texan. And I've spent so far 11 years in AI. So I've seen quite a few things come and go. I would say the first thing, that I worked on was pretty typical, which was like product recommendation. Did that for a few months. But pretty soon after, I got into generative AI for a summer. That was all the way back in 2016. I was working on synthesizing music using deep neural networks. And although that project wasn't as fruitful given what was available at that time, I ended up meeting someone and we ended up co-founding a company that ethically performed facial recognition for event check-in. It's completely privacy preserving. There was no storage of any faces or any even association to names or emails. It was a really unique system. And then after that, I worked on facial analysis. And so I was deploying Edge AI as early as 2018.
Wow.
But that was, something that really became the main product for my startup, Zenus, at that time in 2020, 2021, and all the way till today. And what we could do is completely get rid of surveys. So you could put our device, it would anonymously scan people and see how engaged they are when they're listening to a speech, when they're looking at a product demo, or anything like that. Where you normally give someone a survey, usually 3 to 5% of people take a survey. This device could capture pretty much 100% of people.
Wait, so it could watch people consuming something and then effectively tell you how engaged they were
In real time.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Because surveys are BS. I mean, anytime someone gives me a survey, I never want to be like, you almost don't want to be too honest, especially if it's not great.
Yeah.
Which by the way, like the irony of that is if it's not great, they need the feedback to know that it's not great to make it better. But you almost don't want to give it to them because assuming you're like not trying to shoot someone down.
Yeah.
But this is like your face doesn't lie, body. What was I going to say?
Your eyes don't lie.
Yes, eyes don't lie. Exactly.
So that's what
I didn't realize that's what it did. That's cool.
That's what the device does. It can, look it up to a few hundred people in real time per camera. You can have more cameras for more coverage. And it gives you a breakdown by sex and age. Did older people, did younger people, did men, did women find what you're showing more appealing? And not just for the whole thing, but throughout time as that speech is going on, for example. So I worked on that. We were the first company to bring both the face recognition check-in to the events industry, as well as facial analysis to the events industry, and it's a market leader. So I worked at that company for quite a few years, co-founded it, served as CTO, and really happy to still be on the board there. I left that in 2023, a few months after ChatGPT was announced, because by then we had settled on the product and it was more about capturing more market share. and I wanted to go look for the next thing where I could play a role early on. And having, you know, having had spent so much time in AI at that point already, I could just see how some of the things might be panning out, and I could definitely see a giant risk on the horizon, a giant threat, a giant danger on the horizon, and that was centralized control of AI.
Yeah.
And so if you see what the power of simpler AI algorithms have been so far, they've completely been reshaping and transforming society. Many of these ways are great. Many of these other ways are really troublesome.
Right.
So if we see people's disconnect from each other from the rise of social media algorithms, if we see the promulgation of division in our society, a lot of that has been enabled through people and organizations and companies that are acting on their own interests. And that doesn't always line up with what individuals, what people need, what societies need, what communities need. Right. And when people or a company decides what can and can't be said by an AI system or any system, then that ends up having an indelible mark on the population. So what that basically means is if everything that you're living in is decided for you by someone else, then whether you want to or not, you end up benefiting them, whether or not it benefits you. How do we rebalance society so that each person feels like they're taking interests that's best for them and their family?
Yeah, and has access to the tools to do that, I think is like the big thing, right? Yeah, well, and it's funny, not funny is not the right word, but like these technologies are popping up kind of all simultaneously across different aspects of our life. So for example, Bitcoin gave us the ability to have like freedom of value, transfer of value. Other things like Ethereum, smart contract platforms are like, okay, now you can have applications, and kind of all simultaneously now we have it being pulled together via AI systems, different algorithms. And to the point you were making before, AI at like a more basic level has already been shaping a lot of the things that we see online and like engage with every day. People just weren't really calling it AI. So like, for example, would you call the algorithms for a timeline on like Twitter or X, or Facebook or whatever? That's AI also, right? I mean, would you define it that way at least as someone who built it?
Yeah. And it followed the larger trend of the 2010s. So when people in the 2010s said algorithm, they were referring usually to an AI system that was recommending things, whether it's product on Amazon or it's posts on a social media site. Those were AIs because they were piecing together faint signals across broad populations to figure out, well, who is this kind of person like? What kind of stuff do they like? And then they would show you things. And the algorithm was always optimizing for your engagement with the platform and how much time you spend on it.
Right.
And that sounds really innocuous at first. I don't think any of these companies sought out to create any negative externalities to society. They sought out to do what any other company wanted to do, which is to maximize their value.
Right. But ultimately, to the point you were making, like, it's kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, because from a person's perspective, it initially looks like, oh, well, it's learning the things that I like, so this is good because it's giving me the things that I like, which is technically true.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, the metadata and the stuff that comes as a byproduct of those systems is really benefiting the company first, where when you have a decentralized AI application or an agent operating on your behalf, it's both. It's giving you, and again, like, correct me if I'm wrong, just because I do not architect the stuff in the way that you do, but my understanding is that, like, it's giving you the things that you want in the sense of, like, the way that the algorithm's giving you the content you want to see, but also you are the one benefiting from the metadata, not XYZ super corporation, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right? So can you talk to me a little bit about, and everyone listening, about what you're building with the local agent install? Because for those who don't know, Rakshak is kind of spearheading right now. When people say to me, okay, but like, show me in practice using Morpheus, he's one of the people who are really spearheading the development of what that looks like from a user experience perspective, and then also on the back end. But as we're looking for other builders to build on top of the network, he's building the local agent install as kind of like a framework or an example of like what this can all do, right? Can you just talk to that? I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the last few, so ever since ChatGPT came out, there's been this huge talk about chatbots. And I think chatbots are great in that they can demonstrate why these current generation Gen AI models are unique compared to the past, software or machines that we've seen, and that they're able to speak like humans in a way. They're able to understand information like humans. If you make a typo, if you say something a little indirectly, they'll still pick up on it. Or traditional software, you had to do everything exactly point. The next extension of a chatbot is an agent. And what an agent does is it can take what you're saying, it can capture your intent, and it can break that down into a task, into a set of subtasks. And it can go delegate those to other agents or other tools, or it can go pull other information. So I'll give you an example. Very recently, the last few days, Grok 3 from XAI just came out. And I was using it today and I said, hey, show me, the real estate occupancy rates for the top 5 US cities by year. And give me a CSV or give me a table with the cities as the columns and the rows as the occupancy rates. And so what it did is said, okay, well, the user wants me to generate this table, but I don't have the numbers. And this agent isn't hallucinating. It's going in, it's pulling, and it's saying, okay, these are the different websites I can go pull data from. It has API connectors. It fetches the data, and then it reasons and it checks it through. And it's like, okay, these numbers look like they're making sense. Let me go find some other news sources to confirm this. And then let me then generate this output. And then let me read the output again to double check. So along the way, you could see yourself maybe, last year doing something similar. You could go and pull that data yourself, do it manually. But instead of me spending, 30 minutes or whatever it would take to do it, I just write my query. I set my phone down. I see a bunch of text flying through the screen. And then eventually I look at the chart. And what happened in between me asking something and it giving me what I wanted is it captured my intent. It pulled diverse sources. It verified. It generated an analyst report. It generated a summary explaining what's going on. There's a lot of individual decisions that were made that normally only humans would do. And that's something that couldn't be done when ChatGPT first came out. Even if it knew all the answers in memory, doing all of these decision-making stuff wasn't a thing it could do because back then they weren't really focusing on agents.
Right.
And so the reason why I bring that up is because fundamentally what we want machines to do isn't just take away our time by making us hook to a screen. It's to actually take work off the table and deliver us results efficiently, cheaply, and quickly.
Right. And so the local download or web app, it used to be a download, is now a web app, which is a great distinction, by the way, because you can run it on your phone, which is huge. I think that like a lot of people are going to love to use it mobily and access these things. But basically what Rakshak is designing and has created is a website-web app that you can access from either a mobile device or a desktop device, which from a user perspective, like somebody who doesn't know a ton about AI, specifically DAI, it'll look like a ChatGPT type of system where I can ask it, and there's prompting to help you along with using these. But what I'm trying to get at here is when you're asking it to do something for you, it is actually cross-referencing multiple agents to access the one that does the thing that you're asking it to do the best. And eventually down the line, probably sooner rather than later, it'll actually be able to do cross-agent functionality where it can call to more than one agent at a time, which to my knowledge is something that no one else is really doing, and accomplishing this through leveraging the Morpheus Network Ecosystem. So it's being done locally, the data is being stored locally, it's private, but the compute routing and inference is actually being done on a decentralized basis. And again, like I don't want to speak for you, but my understanding is the reason that you're building this is kind of like, it's almost like when car companies build an incredible prototype of a car to show off the capabilities of their engineering team. It's like that, but then to help promote, hey, people, use this and help use this as a spark to develop your thing. Shoot. Wow. embarrassing. Use this as a spark to develop like your thing that could then eventually be plugged into something like this, correct?
Yeah. So when, the web app, if you're curious, is mysuperagent.io. So mysuperagent.io. That web app is, like you said, an initial reference, a useful thing that you're going to use a lot. But it opens up your mind if you're a developer for what you might want to build on top of and contribute to as well. So out of the gate, what this web app has is a bunch of agents. Many of these are geared towards pro users of crypto services, right? So like prosumers or power users. And what these people want to do is quickly say, hey, I heard about this, token or NFT that my friend brought up or that my colleague brought up. I want a research analyst to help me understand whether I should engage with it, whether there's other tokens that are similar, etc. So you can just ask mysuperagent.io, hey, tell me more about this token. What's the liquidity status of this token? What does X or Twitter think about this token?
Yeah.
And it's going to go and pull, first it's good. What's happening under the hood is there's actually a delegator or routing agent. And, an earlier version of the software, which was local, like you said, implemented this pattern, about a year ago. So we were a little early in understanding that routing concept. And what happens is it takes a user request, understands the hidden message, the intent of what they want, and then it picks the right tool, services, or agents to delegate. And so you just ask one agent, and then it picks out of the box. There's 12 task agents, and it hands it off. So if you ask for sentiment data about a token, it'll go off to the sentiment agent. If you ask about price, it'll talk to the price agent. The price agent will pull from an API and show you that. So the point is, you're always talking to one interface, just like any of these other chatbots, except it has a built-in team of agents. Right? It's not just a model talking to you. It's a bunch of task agents and a coordinating agent to get the output that you really want. And what that really shows you is a lot like in 2008, a year after the iPhone came out, people started making apps, right? But it was a year after. And during that first year, people saw the built-in apps in the iPhone, like the music app, which was like an iPod, right?
Yeah.
Or Safari, you could finally browse in a nice, at that time, large screen with a really responsive touch. And it's not that the browser was unique or special, it's the entire packaging,
right?
Which is what enabled new abilities that you didn't have before.
Do you remember that the flashlight app used to just turn your screen white?
Yes.
Like there was no actual backlight; it would just make it white. Sorry, it just made me think of this.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of, and that's the thing is like there's a lot of low hanging fruit early on.
Yeah,
and like that flashlight app, right? And so that's what's happening right now this year in 2025. Is you're gonna go on mysuperagent.io and go, wow, I can do all these cool things, and I'm not gonna list all of them. Just go to mysuperagent.io. It actually shows you what you can do with, and then you can also ask what you normally would if it was like ChatGPT or anything else. But you're going to use these, you're going to get inspired, and then you look at the local version of this code base, and and this whole thing's completely open source. So you can take that, you can write your own agent, and then we're going to let you publish that to where your agent can work with these other agents, or you could have your agent get consumed through an API independently of the MySuperAgent web app, right? And that so unlike Apple, we're not going to force you to, live completely in our platform. You can take the code, you can take the compute if you want as well, and then go build on top of that vertically and build your full end product.
Yeah, like if you were inspired by MySuperAgent and decided to build your own agent, to your point, like you could become a registered builder in the Morpheus ecosystem as your own agent as a builder.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And a registered builder just means that there is an address for you to get paid for, right? It's not this convoluted process where you have to, dance a certain way to get in.
You can though, if you'd like to. But
you're always welcome.
Dancing's welcome. Yeah. But no, I got you though. Yeah. Well, I think that is a huge differentiating point to hang on though, because that was the biggest thing. And it's funny. So early on, at least to my knowledge, as somebody who is not quite as on the inside as like you were, the fact that Apple was just giving a place to publish apps was like, it was so revered by the community that there wasn't that much conflict in the fact that they really control it. But now there's a lot of conflict in that. I mean, there's tons of people who don't put apps on the App Store because they're like, why would I want Apple to have access to all the control and get to determine, what I can and can't do with my own app? Well, this bypasses that whole problem.
Yeah, I think the last couple of decades can be a little deceiving for anyone who's been developing for that long. So before the iPhone App Store came out, if you wanted to make like a little snake game on the old phones, or if you want to make your own version of an app for a phone, you had to go through the cellular providers and the manufacturers.
Yeah, because how would you even get it on the device?
Right. So if Verizon, didn't want it, then it didn't go through, right? That's not even a concern anymore. However, Apple and Google still maintain high levels of discretion and often apply that unequally. And so bringing back to the point from earlier, what AI is it's inherently very controversial. Just like when I was working on face recognition and face analysis, those are also inherently very controversial. And I think there's a moral obligation for those who see it as what it is and can make a difference to jump in and make that difference. And it's not just me, it's not just you, it's not just even Morpheus. It's getting all the right people to row in the right direction.
When you say what it is, what are you referring to? Like, what does it mean to you? I think everyone's answer to that might be a little bit different.
So it's controversial in that whenever you do something that can influence the decisions people make, especially if they think or they should be doing something that's in their best interest, then you have a conflict of interest when that person can't opt out or can't choose to proceed with something.
Yeah. So something that I have been kind of saying and using as a descriptor for this has been the idea of compelled code. And what I mean by that is within the past couple of years, this idea of compelled speech has become pretty popular. So when people talk about freedom of speech, typically what they're talking about is a nation state or a governing body saying, hey, you can't say that, which is a problem. But what is arguably a bigger problem is not just saying you can't say that, it's saying you must say whatever it is I want you to say, right? Well, code works in the same way, and I personally view code based akin to speech. I mean, it is ultimately written speech.
Code is machinery speech.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is ultimately speech, right? And so it's one thing to say, hey, you do not have access to this tool. I'm not allowing you to access it, which is inherently bad on its own. It's a whole nother thing to say, you must use the systems you must use the code that I want you to use. You are compelled to use it. And that is the future that I am most afraid of, is a future where mega corporations, nation states, governing bodies, whoever it is, are able to effectively compel code onto us. And this is the solution for that, right? Like, I think we're in agreement on that. And that's like at a core, like on a core principle level, why it means so much to me. And I think that you'll find, like everyone listening, I think that you'll find so many of the people working on this project share that same ethos. And like, it's deeper than just, hey, we want to make a cool piece of tech that is like financially incentivized, which it is. And that's fine. I don't think we need to hide from that, but it goes so much deeper than that, which is, I believe, what you're speaking to. And
when you control code, you control society. And when you control and lock down models, you control and lock down people's brains.
Right. Yeah. At a scale that we've never seen.
Right. And that's the default outcome, because whether, they have a certain name or a certain face, people are people. And when they feel they have asymmetrically high amounts of power and they can continue to accrue more, they will. And the way you get around that is not to cut everyone down. It's to enable all sides to have a voice. It's to enable all sides to build systems that are sovereign and reflect their group's interests and then the individual's interests and then for their future progeny. And the only way to do that, from what we've seen in history, is having open standards that everyone can opt into or opt out of.
Right.
And when you do that, the message becomes obvious when that works out that that's the way to do it. And so this has happened before. I mean, we're not fighting an uphill battle, right? I think a lot of people feel that the outcome is a certain outcome that doesn't look great is inevitable. That's not true. It certainly is inevitable if we stay on the sidelines,
Yeah.
but we're not, right? We have a lot of people, people that we didn't even expect to come onto our side.
Totally.
Meta's on our side right now. DeepSeek is on our side right now. Those guys have nothing in common,
Yeah.
right?
What's funny is I know I would love to have
Almost nothing in common outside of the models. And so we're seeing this, these two sides at least, or multiple sides forming. And as long as we can keep playing a game where players can come in and out as they choose, we're living in a free society.
right.
And that's what I want. And so what Morpheus broadly is doing is saying, hey, what if from now on, all intelligence, all models, and thus the influences of people's minds can be directed by anyone for themselves? And so what does that mean practically? I don't want to be too heady either. It's when I ask when I ask my phone, when I pull out my phone, when I pull out my laptop and I ask, what should I do? What should I eat? What should I watch? What should I tell my friends or my wife? Or what should I tell my colleague when this happens? I always want to know that answer is largely influenced with a desire to benefit my interests.
Yeah, like if it knows your specific interests and it's giving you an answer based on knowing you, that's a totally different thing than, well, I at name XYZ Corporation here think that this is the proper thing to do. So let me apply it to Rakshak or let me apply it to Bo.
Right.
Which may or may not be the right answer. But, and like, I think, not even I think, I definitely demonize the centralized version of this pretty frequently. And I sometimes do it unfairly so, because I don't think that every single company, every single nation state government, I don't think that they all inherently have bad intentions. I think that in a lot of cases, the intention is good.
Yes.
But the outcome is not, because people are so individualized and different. Like even we know each other and we're not going to have the same perspective on everything. We're not going to have the same principles, belief system, exact same morals, whatever it is. And so the outcome that I need out of an agent is not exactly the same as what you do. So why not just have a system where I don't need to worry about that? Right?
Yeah. And so the way we build that future, and the point is that every individual gets to do that, right? So it's not one group saying everyone else must act in a way that benefits me.
Unless if you want to. You could, in theory, though, opt into those agents that are trained on more of a group thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And you can have multiple agents and you can have multiple models for different situations. That's fine. What we don't want is, one company or one model or one agent or one network or one person setting the pricing of these things. And we're all beholden to that. That's not what we want. We want to live with a high degree of agency and freedom. Otherwise, we're just livestock.
Yeah. Literal sheep.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're livestock. Humans are meant to lead and take directive over their lives. When we don't is when we fall off and we don't feel fulfilled in our lives. And even if my interests may not be, perfectly aligned with what's healthy, it's up to me. It's my responsibility to learn from those experiences and to build up a better understanding of the world. And that's really hard to do when there's some other influence constantly saying, no, don't do that, don't do that, do this. Or even worse, you don't even know that those options exist because the world has become so censored.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're not even pushing for like anarchy. We're just pushing for transparency.
Yeah.
We just want to know what the rules of the game are.
Yeah.
Like, what are the rules of what you're operating in?
Let's make this real. Like, think about the pandemic.
Yeah.
There was so much information that flipped back and forth. And I don't care what your political orientation is or anything else. No individual heard a clear, honest, no one heard a clear, honest transcript day to day of what's actually happening. There was so much influence from all these sources. And what do people do? Their attention spans have responded to that by becoming shorter. And it's not necessarily bad, by the way. Everyone says, attention spans are short. It just means you have an amount of time to give to a large amount of information. And you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't. So your brain giving less attention to things is not a bad thing. It's just the most obvious outcome when you're flooded with information. And so what's going to happen is the way people have used search engines to catalog and assess, the litany of information out there, people are going to go to agents to then decipher that information, piece it together, find out what else. What about the search query you didn't know to ask?
Yeah.
What about the stuff that was omitted? What about the stuff that was brought in that wasn't relevant? You need experts, right? People get second opinions because it's not that you need an expert, it's that you need experts.
Right. Well, this is where too, and you kind of just touched on this, your own personal super agent that's designed to fit your best interest will learn things about you that you do not know about yourself, because it can purely collect much more metadata on you than you ever could for yourself. And that's why, though, that needs to be owned privately. It would be a horrible existence if that was out there and somebody else got to then say, but actually, let's sprinkle in a little bit of this. But actually, let's make sure that their viewpoint is slowly being like shaped so that they think this thing instead of the thing that is in their own interest.
Yeah.
I think we're going in circles a little bit, but at least I am. But only I like to stick to the practical stuff, because you are actually physically building right now the practical stuff, and I can't wait for people to get it in their hands and really try it out, because it is so dang cool. And especially when you factor in the differentiator being the multi-agent, the connection between agents, right? Because right now, I think people are really used to using these one-off tools. For example, I use like Perplexity for search all the time. But if I wanted to write, or like DeepSeek, if it was something that was open source, but if I wanted to write a paper or like edit a paper, I probably wouldn't use it for that because it's optimized for search. But your web app does all of that, and it shows you which agent it's tapping into, which I think is such a good visual representation, because people who are less technologically inclined, they don't need to see the back end. They just want to see, hey, I asked it a thing and it's now talking to these other agents and just like executing for me. And this is the guy building that, which is awesome.
I mean, I have a lot of help, from the contributors. In the Morpheus.
Yeah. I'm giving you. I was gonna say I'm giving you too much credit. I'm not. I'm giving you the amount of credit. But
I'm playing a role, and I'm really happy to be working with so many great people.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great people working on all of this stuff. So for those at home, we got interrupted twice from other people here. So that is why we have a jump cut here. Anyway, we were close to wrapped up anyway, but in every single episode of Brainpower that I do, I always want the guest to get a kind of a platform or an opportunity for like final thoughts or final words on everything that they're working on. And so I kind of want to give you the floor for any last words for people listening in the DAI community, the Morpheus community, someone who's interested in what you're doing or wants to build alongside of you. Love to hear it.
Yeah, so I want you to know that there are a lot of even unexpected forces on your side. A little after ChatGPT came out, it seemed that proprietary and closed source AI had a massive, unassailable advantage over everything else, and that they would even use the forces of the government to tamp down on and restrict open source, humanity preserving AI. Things have changed. We've had companies like Meta, now DeepSeek, and even xAI's Grok pushing on the right side of history, which is building technology that's capable and powerful and maybe even better than the closed source stuff, while keeping it open source so that we can all partake in the outcome of our species. So don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like history has already been written. This is an active moment for our species as we finally build something that can challenge and even supersede our collective intelligence. And as long as we all make sure to represent ourselves, and all of us do that, then we all are represented, and we all do have a say in how this all works out. So please keep fighting, and whether you're building agents, whether you're choosing protocols like Morpheus to deploy agents, or whether you're doing science only in labs that are funded by people that think in a similar way. It's important that the brain power and the resources are being accumulated and congregated in areas that represent all of us and not just some of us.
I could not have said that better myself. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here, man.
First.
Thank you again to Rakshak for jumping into episode 8 of Brainpower. As you can see, we had a slight interruption towards the end, which is where the jump cut came in. We were down in Texas doing sort of a miniature jam session hackathon with other contributors to Morpheus, and there were kind of a lot of people in and out of the property that we were recording in, so apologies for that, but shout out to everyone who was involved in that. It was an awesome week down in Texas. As always, this is the part of making content that no content creator likes, but we really have to do. If you're enjoying Brainpower and have liked what you've listened to so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel or the page on whatever podcast medium you're using to consume this. It really helps us grow the channel and create more content for you to help propagate the Morpheus Network ecosystem. As always, I'm Bowen. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
I'm trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
You're listening to Brainpower.